Hello, Karoo. This video is going to be the first in what's hopefully going to be a series of Northwest walks. So as you see, I'm driving down Reeth Road, heading west out of Pendleton, right here. And that's where I'm starting this story. So about a month ago, maybe a little less than a month ago, we were out talking with our neighbors, and Kimbra came by, and she had this book called Northwest Walks. And she said, Scott bought this book at Armchair Books in Pendleton before it closed down, and he always wanted to do these walks, and I thought maybe you'd like this book. So I started looking at the book, and it has 75 relatively short walks scattered all over Oregon, Washington, and Idaho in it. And so I made a map of all of those walks and looked at ways in which I could go maybe do all of them. And this was all in the midst of me buying or looking for a new Land Cruiser. And so when we ended up buying Wilbur, I thought, what a great opportunity. The very first trip in Wilbur, I will go take a couple days and do some walks. And so the first set of walks are along the Columbia River Gorge. This is number 14 and number 15 in the book. And the great irony here is walk number 14 that I took and that you're seeing footage of right here is not even the walk number 14 in the book. It turns out I was supposed to be on the other side of the road, and it was just a spur off of the walk number 15, which is coming next. But obviously it had great views of the Columbia River, Mount Hood. It was a beautiful day. The foliage was nice. And there was no one else walking while I was on this particular little trail. So I wandered around and looked at the oak and some of the fruit. I don't even know what that is. The book itself actually covers a lot of those fruits. And then after that, I actually walked across the street to where I'd parked and then headed upland from the river. So this would be walk number 15. And once again, there's a lot of oak trees. It's pretty arid. It felt warmer and more dry, but it was also a little later, obviously, in the day. And there was this beautiful grove of oak, but they had it closed off so you couldn't get into it. And then you kind of looped around and came up on top of a ridge. But first, we ran into some power lines. Hydra Field runs through my neighborhood. Somehow it always just made me feel good. I could put a spare bulb in my hand and light up my yard. As I said, the views were really nice. But as I finished up this walk, I headed back to the car and then took in the last few views and headed out for white salmon, which you'll see in a second here after we pan down the Columbia River to the east. My goal was actually to go to a walk number 16, which was on the Lewis River. And I was going to head north out of White Salmon and hit a Forest Service road and then come around the back way down the Lewis River before I headed up to Mount St Helens for walks number 17 and 18. And you'll see my dash cam got a little tilted here, but yeah, that was, I believe, Mount Adams. But as I headed down the river here, when I approached the place for the walk, there was tape on the side of the road, pink tape showing that we weren't allowed to stop there, and the campground where the trailhead was said no day hiking. So I was forced to continue and drive all the way up to Mount St. Helens, which you see right here, for walks number 17 and 18. And it was a long drive, and the roads were really, really bad. They're paved, but they're degrading. But the views were amazing. And as I approached St. Helens, the first walk took me down to the edge of Spirit Lake. And so I came down off of a ridge here, and it was nice and cool for most of that walk because we were in the shade. And you can see there was a lot of moisture there where you forget you're in the rainforest over there, especially this time of year. And then Spirit Lake with all the logs. And I don't know if those logs are still there from the eruption or if they're new logs. I don't know why they'd be there. There's still some steam coming up from various spots on the mountain. And it was a gorgeous walk down to the lake and then back up. But I was kind of in a hurry because I wanted to get to the next hike, which I think is called Independence Ridge, which was actually just a little short jaunt from the place where I parked the car and allowed me to get up on top of the ridge. But the views up there were amazing. So as I got up on the ridge, you can see that's the road I came down. So I'd driven into the previous hike, which I think is Harmony Lookout or something like that, and then came back down this road and parked right off of it and climbed up on the ridge, and there was flowers and obviously that kind of stuff. But there was also a great view of Mount Hood. And in addition, another great view of Mount Adams. So from this location, I could actually see Hood, Adams, and St. Helens. And later in the day, I would actually get a nice view of Rainier as I headed north out of this area and ended up near Packwood. So yeah, I finished up this hike. It was around 4 o'clock, I think, and then drove up to the southern edge of Rainier National Forest, or National Park, excuse me, and went to find a campground there where I could spend the night after getting dinner in Packwood. And I got to sleep in Wilbur, which was awesome. I'm here at the pay station. It's like 7 o'clock. There are no things in there. I just walked back from site H3 to pay, and I can't pay because there's no envelopes. So I will pay in the morning or later. So I ended up borrowing a bicycle from my neighbor camper and riding back and finding the camp host and paying that evening. And then I got up in the morning and headed to Rainier National Park to go on a couple of walks there. And I think the first one was called Silver Falls, and the other one was going to be Grove of the Patriots, which I was going to wait till the sun kind of got into the trees so I could see them. And so I started walking down here, and I'm looking for the falls, and I'm trying to follow the trail, and suddenly I realized there was no trail. So I had to go back and retrace my steps. Eventually I did find the trail, heading south from the parking lot, and hiked down to Silver Falls. And this was kind of, I think, the least interesting of the hikes that I took. And once again, the book that I have is 25 years old, and my reading comprehension isn't great, as clearly was demonstrated by the fact that I initially took the wrong little hike. It was pretty. The waterfalls were nice. The hike was, I think it was like a mile and a half total round trip, but it was nothing special. However, once I hiked back up to the parking lot and headed to the other side of the road, Grove of the Patriarchs made up for the fact that I didn't find this one particularly exciting. Grove of the Patriarchs was just beautiful. And hopefully I'll get done with this footage and we'll get to Grove of the Patriarchs. Yeah, nice waterfall there. So Grove of the Patriarchs, as you might imagine, is old growth timber. And there's a nice hike parallel to the river. And then eventually you'll see I come to a footbridge, and it takes you over to what is in essence, or not in essence, it is actually an island in the middle of the river. And it's just a lovely spot. And this is still pretty early in the morning. I started out at around 6:30, and so the sun had come up enough so there was beautiful light in the trees while I was here, But I was the only person here. I was the only person in the parking lot. And I was able to wander around. There's a loop and look at all the old growth timber and the wood, and the ambiance was just wonderful. And I just, this was the moment when on this little trip where I was like, okay, I'm really glad I did this. It was a lot of driving, a lot of bad roads. A couple of the hikes weren't as exciting as I'd hoped they would be. But this was just so beautiful. And I wandered around here for probably 45 minutes or so. And as I was walking back, I could hear someone coming across the bridge. And I ran into him as I was walking out. So it ended up being a really, really just a wonderful hike. And I'd actually like to go back, and I was able to camp at the campsite not far from here, Forest Service campground. And I'd like to go back with Sarah, I think, and visit these places again, and actually visit a few more places in Rainier National Park. So I finished this and started driving up north, and my goal was to go up to this hike in National Forest lands near Wenatchee. By the way, that was Mount Rainier on the drive out. And in order to get to Wenatchee, I had to cut down into Yakima and then go over into Ellensburg. And my plan was to follow the Yakima River Canyon all the way up to Ellensburg. I was trying to stay off the freeway. But that road was closed because of the fire you just saw. So eventually I ended up north of Ellensburg and on this dirt road, and I had to go about 20 miles in on this dirt road to get to the spot where the hike was. So I got there, I don't know, maybe between 12:30 and 1 o'clock. And as I pulled in, I didn't have GPS signal, so I was kind of doing the old-fashioned way and trying to find the spot on the map. And I stopped and actually cooked lunch on the stove that came with Wilbur, and I had rice and beans, and it was really delicious, and I was just enjoying this a lot. Then I set off on this trail to find this cool overlook that was supposed to happen on this last hike of the trip. And all of a sudden I came to this scree field, and I was looking out, and in the hike in, I thought, this doesn't seem quite right. It's like I'm in the wrong place, but maybe if I just keep going, I'll find it. I'm gonna try this again. I just went 3/10 of a mile down another trail at another location thinking it was the trail, and I realized that I was in the wrong place. So I had to come another 3 miles down the road, and I think I'm at the right place now. So this hike was actually really nice as well. As you can see, there had been a fire coming through this area, and the description in the book talked about how beautiful the forest was. But I found this burn area really gorgeous with all the small trees and flowers and the kind of reds and orange colors. And then after about a mile, a little bit more than a mile hike uphill, I popped out at this beautiful viewpoint. And it was definitely worth the hike up here. And once again, not a lot of people around. I could hear people on motorcycles at one point when I was on the trail. But pretty far back in on these primitive forest roads, so I don't think a lot of people are running around, and especially on a Thursday, which was today. So as I hiked back out, coming down, I was just really appreciating the beauty of this area and the fact that I was up here alone. I'd like to do more of these hikes with other people rather than by myself. But this was a great experience, taking Wilbur out for the first time on a road that I probably could have done with a two-wheel drive pickup. But it was good nonetheless. I have done 3 more hikes today. One aborted hike, which was the wrong location. But then I got it in the end. Just came back from this last one. So I'm going to jump in the car and head back to Pendleton, hopefully. It's been fun. So how many hikes have I done? I did 2 on the Columbia, missed one that I wanted to get to that was closed, 2 more at St Helens, that's 4, 2 more at Rainier National Park, and this one, so that's 7. Not bad for 2 days. A lot of ground covered.